Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Bass Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random.
Exceptional Radio. Hey, good afternoon. It is the 6th of October, and it is fantastic out. Haven't had weather like this in quite a while.
be great if it stayed like this. This is like perfect.
I know. Like, I want to thank the weather gods for delivering us such sublime weather right now. And I don't want to like jinx it or complain about it at all. No, the rest of the weather's good because it helps me appreciate days like this. I would just like this to extend for like, I don't know, about 20 more weeks. Is there even a climate
put
region?
it in terms of weeks, I guess it doesn't sound as bad.
Yeah.
20 weeks is a long time.
Yeah.
When
it's like
the sun goes down at like 4:30.
I mean, is there even a climate region where it's like this year round? Like a low latitude mountainous region, maybe? I mean, there was a blizzard in Arizona the other
It used
day.
to be like this year round.
Yeah. There was a blizzard in Arizona the other day, I think, like Flagstaff or something like that. I remember seeing pictures of cars like just completely covered with snow. I thought,
whoa,
isn't this a little early for that?
Well, if Arizona gets snow before Indiana, that's really wild.
Yeah. I think
especially a blizzard.
I think they got snow before Colorado did this year too.
Huh.
Climate change isn't happening. It's a hoax.
Well, I remember when Texas started getting more frequent snow. That's when even the Texans had to be like, okay, what's happening here?
Well, 20 years ago, when one of my buddies moved down there, they had a snow, like first snow in 20 years. And then 10 years later, they had their first snow in 10 years. And it was just as bad. It was like icy and cars were wrecking all over the place. And then 4 or 5 years later happening. And now it's happening every couple of years in Texas. That's like, if this kind of stuff is happening within the time frame of our memory, which is limited and, man. So thank you, weather gods, for this sublime weather we're experiencing right in this moment here in Indiana.
Well, I guess India had pollution so bad they were like asking people not to travel and stay home for work and shit.
Oh man. You know, to contrast that, there's a place in Connecticut where they passed like a city resolution to request that Starbucks workers work faster because the citizens didn't like waiting so long in the drive-thru. And then when a local news team went in, they went inside and they found that they were like second in line.
Yeah, man. Well, it's funny you say that. We walked to the butcher's block and there was, as far as the eye could see, all you could see is cars, and we maybe encountered 5 or 6 people on foot, and I think most of them were probably on their way to their vehicle or from their vehicle into some place where it's like, the funny thing I learned about time expectation traveling around the world is like the American, like, oh, I need to be this place at a certain time, and like it's not actually really important, it's not unique, but it's a very American thing where it doesn't exist everywhere. And I'm sure probably, you know, Victorian shit probably, like post-Victorian probably does it, but then the way that people don't plan their trips like properly and try to like exploit every minute possible
or so break the law so they can get somewhere on time.
Well, they can't even break the law when the traffic is. So what I'm getting at is like, you can't even hit the speed limit when there's too many people on the road.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And when everybody's like not leaving on time, then it causes everyone to get backed up. So then it's like, if you actually walk, you end up getting places the same time, if not faster, than like driving to those places because people are stuck in traffic. So that's where I'm like, you can't even speed in the city. It's like barely possible.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, they're not breaking the fucking law. They're just stuck in traffic, polluting. Like when people are driving down 10th Street. Um, I
I
really
avoid
try
10th
to
Street.
avoid as much as possible, but
Oh yeah.
sometimes you can't. But then it's like when you're in your car and then pedestrians are supposed to have right of way everywhere anyway, but when people actually practice it, it's like, oh yeah, this city is not really that big enough that walking is out of the question anywhere. It's just a matter of like how much time do you set aside to walk, and then when it comes to it, it's like if like if it's kind of at a distance, taking the bus is like also an option. But the notion that everybody like has the right to drive and has the like need to be an individual is what ends up causing everybody to be on the road at the same time, which is where like again, when you look around and there's just 2 or 3 thousand cars in sight and nobody's like walking, it's like, okay, this is easily avoidable, but everyone thinks they're getting places faster by driving.
You bring up a really good point. When I was at Right Res, for a period of time I was tasked with moving a database and then getting all the permissions like correct. And this was a several hour process late at night. And so I would come into the office like, an hour late, and I would stick around an hour later. And what it meant was I came in at 10 o'clock instead of 9, and I took lunch at 1, and I was on the road when everyone else was having dinner. So by, slightly deviating from the standard model, I was able to, get around horrible traffic and horrible lines for lunch and a horrible drive home. I was in a really lucky position where my employer was really, hey, that's not a bad idea, kind of, and it worked out. But that's not really a solution that could work for everyone.
No, definitely not. And then it's like, on the other hand, why are people getting sent places to go eat when it's like you would think that to build community and also get deals, a place would order from the same place consistently, or the same few places where you're like, okay, we're going to order, because they did this at Best Buy ever so often, which I'm like, I don't know why they don't do this shit every day, because like everybody has to fucking eat if you're doing labor. So like the idea that then, it's like 12 o'clock, you're responsible for your own food and you got to come back and work. And it's like, if they hadn't been paid and they're in between checks, then that person sometimes is taking lunch breaks and then not able to eat, and then they have to come back to work and then they're grumpy. So it's really like every business's benefit to ensure that their workers are well fed.
Yeah.
And when they get their break, they don't have to fucking go somewhere and like waste some of their time, waste some of their break traveling to get the food, when it should just be like right there.
Well, it's like people somehow forget that the power of collective bargaining extends beyond the framework of a union, and that a group of people or a company could, pool together and get a better deal for food.
And better service.
Every day. Catering is a very highly coordinated. It's a model of logistics mastery when catering comes together, because that's food. If it takes too long, it's overcooked. If it takes or it's cold, or it's there's something wrong with it. And so those things have to be. It's not like a restaurant where you go there and they have all the tools on hand. So that industry has to be on point, and they generally are. The food's better than
you can't
most
really
restaurants.
be a bad catering service. Like,
No.
you go out of business real quick.
Yeah, like instantly.
Yeah.
I mean, I've known people who try to start like pastry catering type stuff, where they would bake all the things. And all it takes is 1 or 2 bad cakes or series of pastries or whatever, and whoops. Like, it takes a lot for a cake shop or a cookie shop to actually open up a brick and mortar and not just operate out of someone's home kitchen.
Have you heard of Parlor Donuts?
No, but you had me at donuts.
Well, one of they're a franchise, but they have a location in Bloomington now. But one of the things they do is they don't just have shit sitting around. So apparently, if you go in, all their cases are empty, but they have the like names of like what the donuts are, and they make them to order.
Oh, so they fry them up on spot?
I guess they either fry them up on the spot or like they'll have shit that may be prepared and then they combine it so that it's like,
oh yeah,
you don't have to wait a super long time.
Yeah, so you don't have like icing that's been on the donut for 4 hours and sprinkles that have been oxidizing under a lamp all day.
You're just not going to have a stale donut because of the way they go about making it.
Yeah.
So, and then in the process, they're not going to have a bunch of shit at the end of the day that they have to throw away because they're not making them for customers that don't exist. So this to me is like,
this is the most sustainable donut operation I've ever heard of. It's the most
sustainable fucking model, but it's like, why do businesses? Okay, I understand what happened and when it happened, but there's a need to move to this model where you only make what your customers demand in the moment and don't make shit ahead of time so you don't have shit to throw away. So I'm like, what hasn't clicked for businesses to be shifting to this model? Where actually the funny thing is when you see like big box stores, they have actually shifted to this model, so they're not carrying a ton of back stock. So if you see shit that's like on the shelf at Target, that's probably like most of what they have. They may have like one fill in the back, but it's not, they're not carrying a ton of back stock in a lot of the big box stores in the same way, because I just don't think they can. But then you see the like little stores that haven't really like caught up to it. So I
think it's tough. I think that we've got this really strange consumer dynamic where people want to participate in seasonal shit, or they want to have certain things on hand or available at a moment's notice. It's like the whole instant gratification thing is really pushing late stage capitalism into its final form, where we have like, you know, I already see Christmas decorations starting to pop up. We're at the first week of November still. It's the 11th. It's the 6th day of November. It's not even done with the first week. And you know, I saw Black Friday sales going on all over the place online, and it's like they just can't wait to tap into whatever it is. And so these things are virtually year round now. And I think that you're right. Stores that are trying to cater to that, they're always going to be holding some kind of old stock. It might be new old stock. It might be just returned stuff that they can't get rid of. It might be a lot of something that nobody actually wants anymore. But now they've got this sunk cost, and that can't last. That was like good in the pioneer days when you had like the regional, you know, goods market or general store where they had like, you know, big sacks of beans and corn and things that you needed because you were only going to go to the store once every 3 months. And so you had to stock up. But we don't live in that society anymore. And I understand there's some circumstances where like a family that has 4 kids, they're going to be stocking up on more of everything because they've got more people to feed. And hopefully they have enough space to store the larger quantities of the things that they are going to consume. But, you know, you're talking about like essentially things that are made for a person to order. Not toilet paper, not giant tubs of peanut butter.
Non-perishables.
Like I mean, I see why Sam's Club exists. Like, but it always seemed like Sam's Club would be the place that the general store would go to get their supplies to sell to other people to like distribute out.
Well, that's where like, have you ever gone to Gordon Foods?
You mean the like the direct wholesaler that sells to restaurants?
Yeah.
And yes,
yeah.
I've never been inside. I've only driven by.
Not a huge difference between there and Sam's. So it's like, yeah, Sam's really is outfitted for that type of institution or establishment, but then people they try to live like stores and restaurants, and then you see the way like it's funny. Rich people are so stupid. So like, if you look at the way rich people's closets are, it just looks like you're walking into a store because they're not very creative most of the time. So it just looks like you're walking into like a jewelry shop or a shoe store, because that to them is like the peak of class, where it's like they can only think of shops. They can only think of like a high class restaurant or a high class.
That's like on MTV Cribs.
Fucking store.
It's like on MTV Cribs when they emulate the hotel rooms for their bedrooms so they can sleep.
Oh my God. Yes, exactly. It's exactly the same shit. And what's funny about it is like, I don't think that people, so class in the sense of understanding aesthetics and understanding how to combine colors and textures and arrange things in an edited manner, that's not something you can buy. People who go to school for that don't automatically understand it. So it's not something you can just pay and learn.
No.
And rich people love the notion that they can just like buy it and have somebody come in and do that shit for them. And a lot of times, because of the disconnect between the rich people understanding from where that aesthetic understanding comes from, and then them trying to like influence the combination, you get really childish displays of money that they think are classy, where you have like somebody's got like an F1 car in the fucking basement and a bunch of helmets on the wall.
Wait, how do they get it? How do they get the car into the basement?
They probably built the house around it, and that's
Jesus.
where yeah, shit like that, where you're like completely unfunctional. And then there's people who will put like a Ferrari in the fucking living room, completely unfunctional because you can't get it out. And then they're like, oh, this is cool. But then when you actually think about the complete uselessness of putting a $300,000 vehicle that's actually meant to do a certain thing, but using it as a centerpiece in a room, it's like the opposite of understanding aesthetics, but also functionality. So it's like they just don't understand where form meets function, but also when they get a bunch of money, they think that it automatically like equates to anything that they do being classy. And a lot of times, if not most of the times, it's just not.
Man.
Like when Donald Trump put gold on everything, it's like, that's not classy.
So
it's gaudy.
If that $300,000 Ferrari was built into a $1 million NASA gimbal system and had some kind of like multi-screen immersive video display system and was actually a driving simulator, that would be super dope. But now we're talking about like a multi-million-dollar car simulator that uses a real functional car as the foundation for the interface, which is ridiculous. Could probably build that for even less and it would be just as good without sacrificing a Ferrari. Why would anybody put a fucking Ferrari? Man, that's the
type of person that wouldn't use it.
That's like the saddest place.
You know what I mean?
That's seriously, that's like the saddest fucking thing, to put a Ferrari into a room that it can't escape from. That's
exactly the type of person that's not going to use a driving simulator either.
That's putting the most highly bred horse, like, you know, bred for racing or bred for doing just the most incredible things, and then just leaving it in the living room. Here's some oats, horse. You just sit there, look good. Here, drink some beer.
But what is owning a supercar that doesn't get raced anyway? You know, and that's where it's like half the time, supercars just shouldn't be on the road. Unless it's on the Autobahn, there's no reason a supercar should be driven to fucking get your groceries.
I'm I'm reminded
That's
of the
supercar abuse.
I'm
straight
reminded
up.
of the Bugatti EB118. It was in the 90s. It was a four-door model of a EB112. It was an extended version of it, and it was like a all-wheel drive quad turbo W16 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 in like 4 seconds. It was, a Bugatti. And the all the auto journalists, they all joked about how you could start your movie, run to the store to get popcorn, and get back before the trailers were done. I still don't think that's like a good use of a supercar to go get popcorn. Like,
Yeah.
first off, why is the
What
person
good is?
why does the person who
Sorry,
owns
go
a
ahead.
Bugatti like not have popcorn on supply? Like, seriously.
Yeah. We have a popcorn maker. I don't know the Bugatti because
Yeah.
I actually enjoy popcorn, so we're gonna have the capacity to do fresh air popped popcorn
On
that's
demand.
on demand.
Yeah, so it
That's
doesn't go
like
bad.
luxury.
Yeah.
That's luxury right there.
Seriously.
And then, again, that's like where doing anything in a supercar but racing is like disrespecting that vehicle when it comes down to it at the end of the day. Like,
And once this whole energy delivery and storage issue is sorted out, the whole look, I love gasoline vehicles. I think they're great. That's because they're what I'm used to. But I also have an affinity for hand powered tools. But I have no illusions that a hand drill can ever do anything on par with an electric drill. The only thing it can do is like some really crazy detailed drilling and at a really slow rate, and give you some really serious like tactile feedback. But you don't actually need that in most cases. In most cases, power tools have completely surpassed. We all know. I mean, John Henry, right? He couldn't beat the machine. And so on some level, it's like it really doesn't come. It's not a power issue because we know that they're fast. It's a how do we store the power? How do we generate the power? And so right now, like you can produce a kilowatt of electricity from, let's see, I don't know, how does this work? 0.08 gallons of gasoline, and it takes 2 kilowatts to refine a barrel of gasoline, I think is what it comes down to. We're like gasoline itself is a fine energy source or storage medium. Unfortunately, it pollutes a lot, and the process of refining it pollutes a lot. But right now, none of our alternatives are really able to meet the demand on scale. So, like hydrogen is a great fuel alternative, but it costs, $3 to $5 per unit more than gasoline. So it kind of works
well, and
out.
people are too scared of nuclear.
Well, that too.
It's like there's a lot of like
We have plenty of energy generation options that would work if people would just read the white paper and understand how the energy is developed and why it's critically important that these things are done in a regulated fashion. But like I've been on this battery kick lately because I've been researching lithium batteries, and it's incredible how fast they charge now. Just mind-blowingly fast. And it's incredible how much energy they store. And I was thinking about it, like, the thing that really would stop, being able to afford the vehicle is one thing, but right now there's only a few times a year where I absolutely need my vehicle to have maximum range and refueling at peak speeds. There's only a few times a year. And so those things would actually only impact like electric vehicles, at the outliers of usage, of utilization right now. And I imagine that in 20 years, 30 years, these problems will be it'll be like such a thing of the past that people will just kind of laugh about. It's like, oh yeah, remember when our batteries used to suck? Remember when our energy was dirty? Oh, I'm glad we got past that shit. Because once all those things happen, like, I'm serious, once I can retrofit an electric motor and a battery into that fits in the same place that my fuel tank does in my truck, and it gives me the same range and or the same meets my expectations for range when loaded up or not loaded up or pulling something, then, and even if it takes half an hour to recharge, that's fine. I can walk around for half an hour and take a break. I don't need to drive nonstop and then take a 5-minute break and then drive nonstop again. Half an hour is a good fucking idea. But it still comes down to, like, how do we get the juice? And it occurred to me that there are, like, all these engine or energy delivery, power delivery test bed industries that exist, like racing, like NHRA, where they're doing their whole, like, nitromethane ignition retardation combustion engines. Obviously, that's impractical for normal humans to be driving around with an NHRA power plant. But on a planet that has, all of those ingredients for the fuel readily available, or a moon that we want to extract resources from, that these things are available on, all of a sudden that becomes extremely useful, not necessarily to make things go fast, but to deliver energy and to generate energy from a readily available resource. And that makes sense. Hydrogen fuel on Earth right now makes no sense because it costs like $15 more, or about $15 per unit in liquid form, which is the viable fuel source for hydrogen fuel cells. And they also have to be stored in very high pressures, and that's nerve-wracking for some people. But it's also just not efficient to generate it right now in this moment, because most of our hydrogen is the byproduct of other, like, petrochemical refining processes. But, we're on the verge, or, all of these technological breakthroughs, materials breakthroughs are on the horizon. I was reading about a company that just developed a solar-based hydrogen extraction process that uses, like, gold nanoparticles spread over a membrane, and the reaction separates hydrogen from water. And so this is expensive now because there's only one of these machines, or there's a few of these machines, and they're running tests on it. But once this is brought up to industrial scale, lo and behold, we can essentially produce hydrogen with sunlight and water. And that's crazy cool. But it still might not be viable on Earth. It might make more sense on another planet or on a moon. Or
in the atmosphere,
or,
in
yeah,
the
exactly.
sense of, like, doing it at, like, a Lagrange point, where
exactly.
then it then gets transmitted back to Earth because it's not as impeded by the atmosphere that protects us from UV rays.
Exactly. So there's all these scenarios where seemingly useless or impractical technologies all of a sudden have extreme industrial viability. And on some level, it makes me kind of mad. It's like, these motherfuckers are just, like, using all of us to pay for the testing of new technologies that we're never going to take advantage or be able to use. But at the same time, like, I don't want to operate heavy machinery on a fucking asteroid so that I can utilize the most advanced energy delivery systems that humans have ever created. That doesn't seem like a fair trade, a good trade.
I mean, you don't have to do it on Earth.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Which is, like, there's always going to be people who want to do that shit and enjoy it. So everybody else doesn't have to.
Exactly. So it's not good for me, but it might be
you don't
great
have to
for
climb fucking cell towers and, like,
that never seems like a good idea.
Towers. No, but some people love it.
I used to climb up high things when I was younger, and it was, at the time, I told myself it was thrilling, but in hindsight, that was some of the most terrifying, like, feeling your balls climb right up into your abdomen types of experience.
Like, when people would go to the fire tower and hang out, I'm like, man, I fucking hate you guys.
There was a time.
The idea that we have to then climb up to this shit, and then, like, this shaky ass structure is gonna, like, be where we're hanging out for the next hour. Fuck you guys. And shit would, I hate it so much. But then it would be like, what, are you scared? And then you can't, like, stay behind when you're a kid just because it's like,
yeah,
Otherwise, they're just gonna leave you behind, and that's not cool either.
And so I went through growing up in Bloomington, the fire tower was this place that we would go and climb up and look around, and I can't even count the number of times I've climbed up that thing. And you're right. After a while, it's kind of like, yeah, we're standing up here above the canopy. Woo, wonderful. That's not that exciting. One time, when I was young and very stupid. During a incredible rainstorm, I donned my rain slickers and climbed up to the top of this thing with a buddy of mine, and lightning and high winds and water coming into the thing sideways, and it was incredible. And I imagine that's what it's like being in the crow's nest of an old sailing boat, from the 1800s, maybe the 1700s. and they're like, man, I can't do this. We got to get down from here. And so we start to climb down the thing, and it's just swaying back and forth. And I didn't realize how much it was swaying when we were up at the top of it, because you're holding on to it and it's windy. But when you see it actually moving, because you're in the middle of it, and you feel the staircases start to twist a little bit. And it's all made of steel, so it should be fine, right? But still, it's blowing around in the wind.
I could feel that shit when it wasn't blowing, which is why I hated it.
Yeah.
It's like every step that whole structure shakes, and I'm like, you guys don't feel that? This whole thing, me? No. And it's like nobody else acts like they fucking could feel the structure shaking, and it's like, okay, I guess.
I think I was like a junior in high school when they renovated it and installed all the metal stairs, and before that it was wood stairs, and so those things would kind of creak a little bit and flex when they were wet and they were slippery. That was
no handrail.
Yeah, that shit's the handrail came later. They added it eventually.
Yeah.
I bet there was a time when that thing didn't have stairs and it was just ladders. And some poor bastard had to climb up that thing every day to look around and make sure there was no big sign of smoke. And then they had to climb down it at lunchtime at noon, because that's when the lunch truck would come around. And then they'd have to climb right back up there for another 4 hours.
Ooh. Yeah, it's just like those, again, you see the cell towers, and then I'm like, I can't imagine being the person that has to go change the light bulb or some shit. Because I think they have to change them. It's like once a year or something.
Oh, I knew somebody who did that stuff, and they would share pictures from way up on top of those high towers and do panning video, and just the videos are like, enough to make your loins tighten. And no,
so they upgraded them to LEDs, so now they should last 20 to 30 years. Yeah, because then I guess the incandescent they basically had a year's worth of lifespan.
Yeah.
So that's why they would have to change them every year.
Well, those are really demanding continuous usage. Those things are just on all the time. So some of them flash. Oh, speaking of things that run on power that need to be changed, I was reading about the NVIDIA video cards that are melting their power connectors because, as NVIDIA says, people are twisting the power wires. And I that's a load of crap. Twisting the power wire shouldn't cause the problem. The connector itself isn't rated for the temperature or the power that it's requiring, and then people are overclocking their devices and drawing more power than the wires are even rated for. They're just using underrated wire and underrated connectors. They underrated it, which is really strange that a company making their flagship product for the most demanding of gamers who are known to do crazy things like overvolt their video cards so they can have more processing capabilities. They know this is going to happen, and yet they lowballed the connectors and lowballed the wire specifications. That seems like that's like totally corporate America right there.
Well, because then those people voided their warranty, so you can't
Yep.
like if they used it the way it was supposed to be used and that shit happened, then they'd be able to just get a refund or like get it replaced, which is where
why do you need to overclock a fucking 4090 in the first place?
you know,
What games can actually take advantage of a full 4090 card anyways?
well, and what I'm realizing is the way that Nvidia is fucking with the power draws on the card, it makes it seem like you might need a more powerful card. But the solution to that is to use third-party software to like get a more consistent power draw rate. And that's like if you don't use a third-party overclocking like software to it, not necessarily overclock it, but to stabilize the voltage, then yeah, the Nvidia shit is gonna like. So you'll be in the middle of a game and it'll just drop to fucking like 70 watts or something, and then jump back up to 200, or I guess in the case of the 4090, like
So there's
they command up to like 475 or something.
So they're getting really huge current swings from like low current to huge current. Okay.
But that's because of Nvidia's fucking software. The way that they set that shit up is there's something off with it, and the only reason I know is because it's usually fine, but then there'll be certain updates where it just like completely fucks up the. It's like the timing belt in a fucking car. Whatever the Nvidia equivalent of a timing belt is, it gets fucking thrown off, and it like will downshift your fucking card unnecessarily.
No,
so
I've experienced that. I only have a lowly 1660 card, and I can't use the gaming experience. I can't use their gamer drivers, the ones that are updated every like week or whatever. I have to use the stable channel because the software that I use does not care for the latest greatest updates. And it's funny because like you wouldn't think that a DAW environment would care that much about the video.
Right. You wouldn't think this stuff makes all that difference.
But man, like if I'm not using like old ass drivers on my powerful machine, I invite all sorts of headaches. And it's weird. Whereas like my all-in-one, I update that thing as soon as they tell me there's an update and it just runs flawlessly. But I'm not using any really demanding software on it. In fact, I'm using almost zero demanding software on it. So maybe that's the key. But, you know, I'm not using the most latest, greatest drivers. And when I do play a game with that system, I'm not experiencing any kind of issues. So sometimes I wonder if the latest, greatest drivers are just their kind of a backhanded way of getting everyone to beta test more.
That's what it feels like in a lot of cases, and it seems like they're trying to do forced obsolescence by like making your cards seem like they're not working as well, but it's like, again, it's as if they sabotage a timing belt in an engine.
Yeah. Because, like, you know, I play Star Trek Online. That's a very mature game. They're not trying to make it look that much better. They're not trying to... They're more interested in developing stories, it seems. And that game doesn't have any... It doesn't have any hiccups with my 1660 card running at full tilt. It's just like, yeah, let's do this. But it's also a, you know, decade or older game that's been under the stewardship of numerous developers who have all tried to ensure that it runs on some of the lowliest of hardware. And so...
How long have you been playing that? Because I tried to like jump into it and it was like impossible for me to... The response of the keyboard, like, because I couldn't use the controller... It just felt weird shifting to that, and then the like restriction on the movement. I don't know if it was like too different for, because it's not even necessarily the graphics, but it was like the gameplay. I just couldn't get used to it.
So there's like, it's like two distinctly different games, actually. Like all the spaceflight, that stuff is really slow paced, even though you can frantically beat on your keyboard and activate all the things. If you take your time and move slowly, it's a lot prettier, and the game is actually really fun because then you can stage all of your combos, your attacks, or your mods. And then, but when it's in third person mode and you're running around shooting shit, being a space commando, you're right. The control interface it's so. I think the dilemma is that they're trying to do everything in an open environment where you have numerous people interacting with each other, so the latency is really high. I don't like playing I don't like beaming to the surface or any of those levels. Those levels suck, and I only grind through those the one time that I have to complete it to get the special prize for completing whatever it is, and then I completely ignore those, and I only focus on spaceflight.
That makes sense. Yeah, because I think the only thing I was really exposed to was the third person.
Yeah,
it was just so like awkward.
Yeah, the first portion of the game sucks. But once you get an advanced ship, it's like Eve Light. Whereas Eve, you have to grind the whole time just to get something cool, and then you've got to pay money to use it. With Star Trek, you can grind a lot, and then eventually they give you a bunch of really cool free stuff, and then you can use it. But getting to the point where you have a ship that can take you into the places and complete the missions where you start getting the really cool stuff, that's the hard part. But once you can do that, once you can get to the cool missions and do all the hard shit and set your level up into like difficult or elite, then it's like that's the really cool stuff. That's when a group, a task force will go in and they're engaging in some kind of who knows what, and two ships they're using two engineering mods, and then someone uses their science buff, and they all kind of amplify each other. And so instead of just a very simple graphic occurring, this really complex, like almost cosmic energy event will emerge as a result of all of these things stacking on top of each other. And those are things that can only happen when you've got 3 or 4 people who all have similarly leveled characters and modded ships. And that's the fun stuff. But getting there, you're right. It's a drag. I think the only reason I made it through the grueling early stages was because I was so put off by handing money over to CCP so I could play Eve. And with all that being said, I haven't actually played Star Trek Online in a couple months now, because the last story update, it was a story where Wesley was the emperor of the Terran universe, and I'm just not. I'm done. Wesley doesn't get to be the emperor of the Terran universe and a traveler. That's just nope. Sorry, that's not happening ever. So they lost
Wesley Crusher privilege.
Yeah, they tried to wield Wesley in some way other than as the traveler, and nope, not having it.
Oh, so he's the traveler in that universe.
Yeah, and he's trying to capture V'ger and unlock the powers of V'ger to send it to destroy his enemies. Yeah, it's like the worst. Whoever wrote this storyline for Star Trek Online deserves to be fired and have their Star Trek fan account just deleted. And then their fingerprints need to be taken and their DNA samples so that they can never create a new account with the Star Trek fan database. I'm serious. It's so.
No, it sounds like they were trying to do too much fan service, and in the process just did a very terrible.
Yeah.
And it's like, which fans were you trying to appease with this story?
Yeah,
because who appreciates Star Trek 1 and Wesley Crusher
at the same time, and the Terrans? Yeah, that person's not a Star Trek fan.
Right.
I'm serious. That's That's like a what kind of conflated fantasy sci-fi universe is that horrible? Star Wars.
At the same time, though, it's funny that, like, I guess it depends on where you came in and where you exited the series. It would be easy to get a certain perspective of thinking it's like all this right-wing propaganda if you like cut out at a certain point or came in at a certain point. Like if somebody came in halfway through Deep Space Nine and was like, that was their first introduction to Star Trek, they'd probably think it was like some right-wing propaganda.
I mean, that's.
But if you came in at the beginning, you'd think it was left-wing propaganda.
I'm pretty sure all of Enterprise is right-wing propaganda.
Oh, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Which is why I tapped out after like half an episode. I don't even think I made it through half an episode.
I can't. I just have to skip over the intro music. Once I do that, then I can kind of get through it. But yeah, it's definitely not Star Trek. It's pre-Star Trek. That's why I don't think it should be. That's why I don't mind that it doesn't feel like Star Trek. It takes place in the same story universe, and it has a lot of similar. There's a lot of similarities, and they use a lot of the same names and conventions for technology, but it's very different from Star Trek. It's different from the original series. And then they try to do some weird tie-in with Riker using the holodeck so he can talk to one of the characters and watch the original formation of the Federation. That was like, they shouldn't have done that. If they'd have just left that show alone and never brought Riker in to do any kind of lip service, then we could forgive Star Trek for creating that awful series. It's like the most libertarian. It's. I don't think it's Republican actually. It's like the most libertarian Star Trek.
Are you still talking about Enterprise?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. But I mean, libertarians are basically just like Republicans anyway.
Oh yeah, Republicans who want to smoke pot and sell off government land and and charge people for government services.
They're the ones that are like, oh, if slavery happens, I don't really care. Whereas the Republicans are like, let's do slavery.
Wait, we got to change the name first. They know what it means.
Because the libertarians are also the ones where you're like, oh, I don't know about age of consent if they're smart enough. And it's like, oh, that's fucked up. But it's always a libertarian says some shit like that.
Yeah.
Like almost exclusively.
Man, it really is.
Mm-hmm. Which is also why you gotta like watch those crypto folk, because a lot of them are libertarians and like will make it seem like they're all about
social equitability,
monetary liberation, but it's like they're really just using it as an excuse to like get rid of all the laws.
They just want to liberate the money for themselves.
Yeah.
We're freeing the capital of the capital. We're freeing the capital from the banks. And we're creating a new bank.
They're the ones that are like, if the market dictates that people have to like work their way out of slavery, then that's what the market dictates. And they just don't want to like actually take ownership of it and pass everything off as if the market is just going to inevitably hurtle towards.
Is that the same crowd
abuse.
that says that like, well, I had to suffer through all this stuff to get where I am, so everyone else should have to suffer too?
Kind of. I think they overlap in some things, but I feel like that one is a lot more Republican, like straight up Republican. Because those people also didn't actually suffer, and what they call suffering is like not
Paying
being
rent?
allowed to say the N. No, they call suffering not being allowed to say the N word in public. Because they'll get fucking a government stipend to pay their rent. They'll get a fucking government payout to subsidize their farm, and then act like they didn't. They don't have any problems with that shit, because that's where it's like the Republicans again act like they hate socialism, but they're the first ones to use those like PPP loans.
We
and
hate
shit
socialism,
actually,
but we need government money.
yeah.
What a
exactly.
strange.
Well, and that's when Biden finally started calling them out, and that's when I'm like, hey, who the fuck is this guy? Because if we can actually point that out, then it's like they can't persist with this narrative that they're against big government when all they do is take government money.
Yeah. They want the money to stop flowing after they get it, though.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's exactly it. They would rather non-white people suffer than also get a benefit that white people got.
Man.
Or like in the sense of if nobody getting it means like non-white people don't get it, they would rather white people suffer alongside than like let non-white people get a benefit and the leg up, because that's where the whole challenge is to the
the student debt thing.
Loan forgiveness. Yeah, that's exactly a perfect example of it, where you're like, this doesn't just impact black people, but they're like, well, we don't want any black people to get anything beneficial, so if white people have to suffer, so be it.
And you know, what sucks is that like we know that societies that have higher levels of education are better. They have higher qualities of life. They have lower costs of living. There are more resources available when everyone is educated, and economies thrive when everyone is educated. It seems like a no-brainer that like, hey, if we improve the lives of everyone, then everyone's lives improves. But
that assumes everyone's life is wanted to be improved.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, it's like that assumes they actively aren't trying to make people's lives worse, which they are, very clearly.
That's
otherwise
like the worst part of it.
Insulin wouldn't cost what money it does. In fucking healthcare wouldn't cost what it does,
or housing, or food,
healthcare, or access. None of those things would be as difficult as they are to attain if the goal was actually a good life for the citizens. So that's where it's like, as long as
it almost sounds like they want the place to be Russia, where there's only one option, and then you take it or you don't.
I mean,
maybe
they
would be happier there.
Well, and even then, it's like that's not how the way that they frame it. That's not how Russia is either.
Yeah.
Russia has fucking capitalism. They just don't do it the same way, in the sense of like, only the rich oligarchs get access to it, and the poor people don't get access to the capitalists or the capitalist system. So it's like that's the main difference between here and Russia, is like they're just even further separated along class lines to in an obvious way, where it's like now where you have people arguing about whether they're going to pay $8 to be verified on Twitter. Fucking poor people can't do that shit anyway. So this is really only
$8 a month.
An issue for rich people to debate, and then in the process making it seem like poor people are affected by this.
If that's not an indicator that Twitter is not gonna, that he's not gonna make, I just don't see Twitter becoming a profitable entity the way that Lord Voldemort thinks that he's going to be able to turn it into a fucking profitable entity. Charging people money to use the digital town hall, like it's no longer a digital town hall if you have to pay to be verified.
Which is why the approach was, this to me feels like a way to get out of acknowledging that everything else he was doing was overvalued and distracting from all that. Because when's the last time anybody's discussed Tesla not delivering the Cybertrucks?
You know,
We've just completely moved on.
Almost everything I've read about electric trucks lately has been about Fiat and no, that's it. Fiat. Fiat's the only company right now that has delivered a fully electric truck that's in wide scale use throughout Europe. The only company. Fucking Fiat.
Renault.
Oh yeah, Renault did it. That's right.
Because they were making fun of
that's
Tesla's
right.
commercials.
Fucking Renault.
But then it's like, what about the Tesla bot that was a fucking clear failure? Nobody's even discussing that shit anymore. So this is where, again, it feels like Twitter was this big distraction to get heat off of his other failing ventures, to make it seem as if like, if he can fix Twitter, then he can fix anything, to reinforce the notion that like he's as smart as we all thought he was, because that whole air of him being the smartest man on earth is quickly fading. People aren't buying that shit anymore.
That also presumes that Twitter was broken and wasn't working exactly as it was intended. I'm pretty sure Twitter was doing exactly what it was supposed to do this whole time. How's he going to make the wheel better? He can't. I think the only real way to make Twitter better would be to go back to the 140 character limit. I see some of these things, they appear as memes, or they get memeified or spread around, and it's fucking novel length Twitter posts that might as well just be full on blog entries.
Well, and here's the thing. Nothing lasts forever, and that includes the culture in which Twitter was the peak social media platform. That can't last forever either. Not to say that there's going to be anything that replaces it, but we might be moving past that people wake up and then get on social media to start their day phase. That I feel like that was 2005 to like now, and then whatever happens next is like, especially with Gen Z, they're going to move away from all the shit that millennials are dominating in terms of their presence and their culture. Like Gen Z is not just going to adopt millennial culture, which includes then not being on Twitter. I don't know if I've ever encountered anybody from Gen Z on Twitter, you know? I think everybody on Twitter is right now like 25 and up, it feels like. Maybe at least in the corners which I exist. But it's not a whole lot of Gen Z. It's like, it's probably more boomers on Twitter than Gen Z.
I'm pretty sure that Gen Z occupies the landscape of Snapchat and TikTok.
Right. And
like,
that's like,
and they're
not moving to Twitter from there.
No,
that's not the direction that's going to go.
They saw the potential for Vine, and when better alternatives appeared, they went to those better alternatives. We had LiveJournal and Friendster and MySpace before Facebook landed. So there's clearly going to be several iterations of a social network that appeals to Generation Z, if they even need one. And I'm not even sure if Gen Z needs a social network. Like, not the way that ours turned out to be. Like, Facebook it's like a wasteland. It's all the things it's become all the things that made me not interested in any of the alternative internet dungeons that, unfortunately most of them have either dissolved or been embroiled in scandal or their user base graduated to Reddit. And Reddit's just a really big forum. It's not like a targeted forum. It's a broad, general everything forum. I wonder how Reddit's user base numbers are looking actually, because it's not really like Facebook. It's much more of a traditional forum.
Well, and then people are like talking about how they're moving to Tumblr, and I'm like,
Tumblr?
what? Yeah,
Tumblr
what?
still exists? I thought it was overrun with porn gifs and cat gifs and.
But it's not even really a social media platform.
No, it's
right?
not.
It's like a picture platform.
It's a GIF video blog.
Yeah. So I feel like people don't know why they're at Twitter, which is why when they're trying to like mass exodus, it's not happening to any particular place.
Yeah, they're just leaving.
But I've also noticed is like a mass exodus never really works. The only reason Facebook worked is because people were already on it. It wasn't like a mass exodus from MySpace that made Twitter or made Facebook work. It was like the fact that people were there and then more people came. So nothing new is going to catch all of the traffic from people exiting Twitter. If people actually do exit. But I just I feel like the people who said they're going to exit Twitter were the same ones that said they're going to move to Canada. You know what I mean?
I mean, I deleted my account when Voldemort announced that he was going to buy it, but I hadn't really actively used Twitter in years. So for me, it was more like, why not?
Yeah. Like you have to be on it to leave it.
Yeah,
you know
I'd already left. I just had a vacant room with my name on it.
Like I'm not on Facebook, so I can't be like, oh, I'm leaving Facebook again. You know, like I left it one time, and if something happens and then people are like, oh, I'm leaving Facebook, I can't join in that like exodus. But I already did, but that doesn't.
Man, like it's weird. Like I probably would have stopped using Facebook entirely had I not found an Ars Technica article about a Chrome extension that would unlike and unfollow everything within an account. And I started using it at like 6:45 in the morning, and by 6:50 I had an error message, like a system level error message, and my session had been closed and I was unable to log back into my account for about 15 minutes. And then I went back in, and I got a notification from Google saying that I had an extension that was not approved and that they removed it from my Chrome sessions. And then I went into Facebook, and lo and behold, it had unliked about 50-60% of everything, unfollowed everything, everyone, everything. And I just spent the rest of the afternoon unliking whatever hadn't been unliked. And next thing I knew, I didn't see anything except for sponsored ads, sponsored posts. It was just commercials, nothing but endless commercials, because they didn't know what to send me because I had unliked it. I'd undone the algorithm. And so obviously we use it to stream our talk show, but all I see are these things that Facebook's like, hey, we think you might like this because you looked at some other thing that's in your cookies. But it never makes sense. It's like, it's the most random series of commercials. And I only say that because I'm kind of used to these fine-tuned advertisements that we get bombarded with in our browsers all the time. And so to go to a place where the ad session is no longer dictated by my browsers, but by my interaction within their sandbox, and they don't know what I'm doing, it's really amusing.
Well, and it's like people ask me, did I see something on Facebook? And I'm like, dude, why would you think I saw that? I haven't been on Facebook for years. So then it just makes me remember that people are not there to acknowledge other people's existence. And it's all about like, did you see what I posted? Did you see what I posted? And it's like, hey, I'm not even on that platform. So you're not actually paying attention to whether I saw it or not.
You know, like, I mean, we have the exceptional chat for this show. But if I want you to see something, I either put it there in the group chat or I send it to your phone directly because you're my homie. And when I want my friends to see things, I share directly. The idea of Facebook or a social network connecting people so that they can share in each other's lives is such a grand illusion.
Well, and the bigger the network, the less possible it is to understand anything about the individuals within that network.
Yep.
And that's like, what is there, maybe 5 or 6 regularly active people in that chat. I don't want any more than that. And it's fucking unmanageable.
Yeah.
I don't want 30 people, 300 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's impossible to carry a thread when fucking 300 people are having 300 different conversations. So over time, I do for this. It's like social media has pushed quantity over quality. And obviously, quality over quantity is really the only way to get anything out of it. That's not just a quick dopamine hit. But when people are, it's a real vicious cycle because when people are looking for dopamine hits to keep from getting jaded, and then they get the dopamine through doom scrolling because nothing positive is being put on these feeds anymore. It's like this real infinite loop of negativity that then ends up with like the most negative voices dominating these platforms, which is why most of them aren't fun anymore.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of negativity, whether it's like people like, did you see what right we lost today? Or then somebody, did you see what fucking minority I hate today? And it's like, there's no real, like, if you don't want that, then it's like cats or porn. And there's nothing really positive that's anything beyond those loci. It's like, you can't, again, it's like, I understand
Man,
that we're losing rights. We've been constantly losing rights since I've been born. So it's like, I get it. It's not that I don't understand that, but seeing it every day doesn't actually help anything.
Man, like,
it doesn't change anything.
Cats and porn. Like, there are more hours of cat videos on the internet than are watchable, period. And I'm pretty sure that there's like an order of magnitude more porn than cat videos. It's crazy how much of the internet is just baseless entertainment. I'm pretty sure most of it's not even entertaining. It's just there. And the culture of the internet has become so attenuated to what actually is an engaging story, or what is something that's visually engaging or sonically engaging, that, somebody who's all they hear is construction sounds, eventually they're not going to notice that.
Yeah, I do think. Well, it's funny to see the NFT wave evaporate, but I do think that people were so bombarded with gray cityscapes with devoid of anything creative that, yeah, you have a whole year where people were buying shitty art because it's the first fucking color they've seen in ages. And it's like, oh, anything looks good when you've been staring at fucking concrete jungles all day. Oh yeah, this stupid fucking bored ape. Yeah, this is cool. This is the next art. Like, no, this is not good art at all. But to somebody who's been fucking, like, if you've just been eating cardboard, well, yeah, fucking raisins gonna taste like the best thing on the planet. Like raisins aren't bad. Raisins are good, but it's definitely not, in terms of the scale of
boutique raisins
taste. even the most boutique raisin, there's going to be something that's going to put that raisin to fucking shame.
Yeah, I mean,
but
like
if somebody's been eating cardboard.
Seriously,
that
like
raisin's the most fucking amazing thing I've ever eaten.
Like you like raisins?
Like,
have you tried dates?
Right, exactly. Exactly. Of course, dates are superior. So it's like I'm okay. Figs have a whole fucking cookie dedicated to them, whereas raisins are just sprinkled in.
Yep.
When you get a
dates have an entire bar
in your cookie, it's just there for garnish almost. Whereas Fig Newtons have a whole fucking type of cookie dedicated to them.
Yeah, dates have their own entire confectionery culture.
Date paste. I don't know. I'm sure there might be raisin paste, but date paste is clearly superior.
Yep.
So it's like there's nothing wrong with raisins, but if people have never learned of dates and figs, then the raisin's gonna be the best fucking dried fruit thing to them ever.
Oh man, their minds are going to explode when they encounter the
if they ever. It may not. So it's like this limited scope of exposure,
preserved cherries,
which then becomes like peak culture at the moment. Well, it has a limit of people actually buying it. Like nobody's buying NFT fucking watches or NFT medallions where you're gonna wear your NFT around your neck. Nobody's fucking doing that dumb shit. They tried to get us to do it. They tried to tell us people were gonna do it. When you have fucking UFC fighters wearing NFTs of their knockouts around their neck, like they tried to convince us that people like regular people like us were gonna end up doing that shit. Ain't nobody fucking doing that shit. It's stupid. It's fucking dumb.
All I could think was
they were
man. They were like showing people 20 cents worth of aluminum and saying, "Hey, this is worth $500."
Yeah,
that's what it amounted to. It was like, hey, here's this thing that's basically a baseball card, but it's not really a baseball card. It doesn't actually exist. Baseball card. It doesn't even physically exist, but
it's the idea of a baseball card. Yeah, man. Because then the way that people were being paid to hawk that shit, but not revealing that they were being paid. Now they finally started getting in trouble for it, but. Yeah, I'm really glad that we're past the NFT phase because it was rough in that there's actual useful technology in there somewhere.
The same thing with all of blockchain. There's an incredible wealth of useful technology,
right?
And it's just being utilized by people who only see the most basic version of utilization, and it always ends up being some variation of gambling.
Yeah.
If gambling is the most that these people can come up with, do we really want them developing technology?
No. I mean, definitely not. Which again, and then it's like, if the only thing Elon can do with Twitter is come in and start charging for shit that they were giving away free, they weren't doing great. It wasn't doing great, but they were getting by. So if his only solution is to start charging for something they were getting by giving away for free, that's not even really innovation. So I think when you get to a point when the facade of being able to innovate anything goes away because this massive public failure, there's no way he succeeds with this because the numbers don't work in the sense of there were only like 435,000 verified people in the first place. So the verified people, the verified accounts weren't that really numerous. So then if it's about like, okay,
Didn't he also fire the board or something like that? Something dumb?
Well, he fired a bunch of people, but
I think I read something about he wanted to form a new board of directors. And all
because of the way he's fired them, they might have to be paid out. It's not clear yet.
Wow. That's
so
not
like
firing. That's oh man.
That's what I thought.
Dude.
If 238 million people paid it a month, that's only $1.9 billion a month. So they got a long way to go before they break even on that.
You got to do that for 4 years where everyone, their entire user base pays.
And not have any other costs in the process.
No costs. The entirety of their user base pays $8 a month.
Dude, it's such a terrible. There's no way they're going to get 2 million, let alone 200 million people, 238 million people to pay $8 a month. So,
who do they think they are? Netflix?
Even if it was $10 a month, that's only $2 billion a month. So it's gonna take 22 months at $2 billion. Like, the numbers don't fucking add up.
Well, he maybe he's trying to spend a lot of money and not get anything back.
Yeah, it's like, the estimated number of users is 238 million. So even if every fucking user paid $10, it's going to take almost 2 decades. That's fucked up. That's fucked up, man. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. 2 months or what is that? 4 years, yeah. Fucking that. Well, that's assuming no costs. 4 fucking years.
So a few days ago, when Lord Voldemort fired almost the entirety of Twitter's India staff, Coos, the India's alternative to Twitter, saw a record, like just insane amount of users migrate to their platform. This is all within the last 2 weeks. Like 4 days ago, they had crossed 50 million downloads of their app as a result of Lord Voldemort canning an entire division. I don't think they've got 200. I don't think they have 238 million users anymore. I think they lost India.
The fucked up thing is, if you like cut your staff in half, but then make the remaining people work twice as hard and twice as long, it's no change.
Yeah.
It's like basically zero change. And then because people are twice as work, they're going to start making more mistakes. So then they have to have, it's like the worst possible decisions being made concerning how to operate this type of organization, which is funny in that the banks that are backing the deal clearly have no other options. Otherwise, they would have gone with the better options. So it's like they're on their last leg. Everybody's investing in Tesla and Twitter because they don't really have any other viable options from their perspective. So it's like, this is the last stand, I feel, of tech bro capitalism. It can't. Elizabeth Holmes and Martin Shkreli started the cascade by failing so miserably on a public scale. But then when Elon comes in and starts failing it, like, he wasn't really failing before, in the sense of, if he made a promise, he might deliver on it like a year after he made the promise. But he was still somewhat delivering. Now he's not delivering on anything. And
yeah, but how many of the things that he delivered on? How many of the things that he already delivered on had been in the pipeline for a decade or longer already?
But that's the only reason he was able to deliver on those things.
Yeah.
But that's also why when he's over-promising, it's so far out of the realm of reality that you can see the despair on the engineers' faces alongside him when he's like saying the things that are clearly beyond the scope of what they can deliver in that amount of time. And it's like he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about half the time. But because he can deliver in a certain cadence and make people think that, oh, because if I say these things and I have a very hard S, and sometimes if I speak a certain way, that must mean I'm intelligent, and I must be very calculated with my thinking, then this must be a smart person. And he's like constructed this identity in the same way that Elizabeth Holmes copied Steve Jobs. He made this persona that people bought into, and now it's so hollow that it doesn't hold up. And I think it's only the people who are in his cult that continue to like shout about the glories of his name.
So I know one person who actually speaks kind of like that, and she is a mathematician. She conducts research on fluid dynamics and fluid modeling. She's a very nice person, fantastic piano player, probably autistic. But she doesn't, I don't think she speaks like that because she wants to be thought of as intelligent. She just speaks like that. She is intelligent, by the way. She's like super intelligent, but not like head of a company and like that, not that kind of personality. I don't know. I don't know Elon Musk. I can't stand to listen to him talk though, because I feel like I'm just being sold something. At least when Steve Jobs sold us stuff, like it made it seem like it was the greatest thing that had ever existed, and you could buy it right then and there, and there were like 50,000 of them to order right then in that moment. How many people have gotten their refunds for their Tesla Cybertruck deposit? I'm pretty sure like all of Australia.
Yeah, I think a lot of them. But here's the thing. Acquiring intellectual property has been conflated with inventing. And Steve Jobs started doing it. Bill Gates was doing it. And Elon benefited from those before him conflating the two. Where it's like, you know, what's the last thing Steve Jobs actually invented himself? If
the iPod.
I don't think he invented that.
I think conceptually he might have been in the room.
I don't think so. I think they had some IP that they had acquired, and if I remember correctly, it was like, oh, that's what it was. They had.
Was it the Newton then? Was the Newton the last thing?
So here's the thing. The reason the iPod was unique was because when you scrolled to the bottom, the screen bounced and gave you feedback as if you'd hit the bottom. So that was what made the iPod unique. He didn't come up with that. They acquired it. So that's what I mean. He put those two things together into the form of a music player. So that's where it's like Steve Jobs adding the screen feedback to MP3 players that already existed as a concept made it seem like he came up with this new thing because he put a specific name on it, when really it was just a visual feedback.
The things that Apple has always done better has just been integrating.
the circular
the wheel.
He didn't invent that either.
No, I know.
So it's putting those two things
together. that his teams have always done really well, better than everyone, is integrating technologies. Like when they add some feature to their software, to their operating system, it had been in place in Linux for 3 years. But until Apple does it, the integration isn't complete, and it's not like nearly foolproof. Whereas with the Linux environment, you might actually have to go into a command line to configure it, and not. I'm just gonna wager that the vast majority of Apple's users are not computer scientists. They don't know how to use Xcode, and they probably never will. And that's fine. They don't need to, because they bought an Apple product where all those decisions were made for them. So at the consumer level, they do a lot of things that are incredible, like the pairing of technology and the unity that they create within a product. But you're right, I don't think they're actually inventing any of that stuff. They might be they might come up with ideas and they say, this is what we need, but it probably already exists. The process has been there. Like almost all of our machining and materials processing is decades old at this point. There are very few new processes that aren't like still research, essentially. All of our machines are just variations on some old machine. All of our computers are essentially just variations on the same model of computer science that we've been using for over 100 years. He didn't even invent the GUI. That was Xerox.
Yep.
So
they also invented the the laptop.
Yeah, and they invented the mouse with one button.
Yep. Yep. So all of those things.
Oh no, wait, Xerox had 3 buttons.
But it's like the notion that taking those things and streamlining them is the same as inventing them is like what Macintosh intended to do by including the notion that they didn't actually invent those things but streamline them. So that's where it's like it was to their benefit for people to start conflating those two things in their head. But now people like Elon Musk are, I feel like, he's going to be the end of that paradigm because he pushed it too far, too fast, and was not able to keep up with the appearances of what need to be kept up for that type of paradigm to persist. It was, and if you look at the window, it was a kind of a short window, relatively, like effectively 1980s to now, like a 40-year window of being able to sort of lie your way into people thinking you created something and you'll have the capacity to do it again. Because I think in then creating the iPhone and making it seem like they invented a smartphone, or the
I had a Windows
iPad
phone a few years before the iPhone even existed.
Right.
I had a Windows phone. It did all sorts of cool stuff.
And Blackberries were better anyway, in the sense of like, I think the touchscreen's overrated because it also ends up, you have to clean it way more.
So the thing that I always thought was really cool about BlackBerry is they baked in end-to-end encryption into everything they did. It was like a hardware encryption handheld device. That was the coolest fucking thing. And you could set up VPNs on them like really easily. The only other smartphone manufacturer in those early days that did anything near as cool was Nokia. But Symbian was bullshit. And it's still bullshit. It would never not be bullshit. It was never going to be mature into a smartphone environment the way that people wanted computers in their pockets. At least Windows Phone early Windows Phone looked like they were trying to model the computer environment, even though it was really blocky and hardware was lacking. I don't know, man. My phone, your phone, everyone we know, even the person with the lowliest entry-level phone, that device is still more capable than the first 3 or 4 laptops that I owned. Like up until I was 22, 23, I think that's when I started owning laptops that were actually really capable, like really exceedingly capable. But even then, phones have ears, they can talk, they can see, they can do anything, almost everything a computer can do up until you have real hardware or software processing requirements. And even then, there's some really incredible developers out there who have made software that runs on phones and tablets that accomplishes the same job that you needed a super powerful computer 20 years ago to accomplish that same goal. And they don't even break a sweat.
Yeah, and I think my phone is more powerful than my previous laptop before this one, which is only like I think I got it maybe 2013.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing: I got a more powerful machine, and then that one got stolen. So then after that one, I got a less powerful machine, and then right now, like I said, I think my phone is more powerful than that laptop, which is where, actually, I think the phone cost more. Yeah, it definitely did. So it's not really out of the realm of, like proportion to pay $800 for a phone and then have it be more powerful than a $500 laptop. People get their phones subsidized, so that's why they're not realizing that phones cost like $800,000-$900,000.
So I bought a unlocked iPhone SE. It's a 2020 model, and it was like $300, I think. And about a year ago, I sold off the last laptop that was mine. And it was an i7, but it was getting hot, and it couldn't run the software I needed. And so I sold it. And now the laptop that I casually use has a 4-core Pentium processor and 4 gigabytes of RAM. And so technically, I think it has more RAM. Maybe it doesn't even have more RAM than my phone. I don't think that it's as capable as my phone. In fact, I know it's not as capable as my phone. Has lower resolution. The touchscreen isn't as responsive. It has a bigger screen, but that's not really much to say because it has lower resolution. The phone might be as loud or louder in audio playback, as like a little pocket speaker than the computer itself. The phone will run longer than the computer. And that's a perfectly usable computer. I use it all the time.
You're paying for smaller, more efficient chips.
Yep. Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Oh yeah. So it's crazy. Like there's so much of this technology. We definitely take for granted. I don't think that I'm going to need to upgrade my phone for, at least 2 more years, unless for whatever reason the communication technology is determined to be completely unusable and banned, which probably won't happen, but never know. The culture of replacing phones even every 2 years seems crazy to me. And so the culture of replacing vehicles and demanding that vehicles themselves be physically change every year seems just it's just mind-boggling to me that seems like a good idea. Because I remember there was a time when cars were the same for 3 or 4 years at a time. And then they would have a generation, mid-generation revision. And then they would have a new model. And it would happen 4 or 5 years, 6 years. But now it's every couple of years, there's a completely different version of whatever vehicle it was. And so where I'm going with this is Tesla sells... And all electric vehicles, in a sense, are technology vehicles. They're technology platforms more than they are utility vehicle. They're a variation of a luxury vehicle, although it's questionable because Teslas have notoriously fallen apart or required other small things that shouldn't have been an issue. But it's kind of forgivable. They've only been an auto manufacturer for a little while. But, the big boys also make those same mistakes. But the thing that Tesla can do that no other car company can do is, focus on technology in the way they have. They had an opportunity to create a platform that didn't actually need the physical updates the way that the traditional ICE automotive industry has operated, where they've got to constantly chase each other's style and power and all that stuff. They were outpowering and outclassing everybody right off the bat. And if they'd have just focused on improving, the software, I guess, they could have gone into the whole computer industry And instead, they're trying to do car and computer industry at the same time. And computer industry changes at lightning speeds, which is absurd also. But gamers got a game and they want to have the most powerful graphics card imaginable, and that's fine. I'm cool with that. But I think the problem that Tesla really has is they can't actually do both. Because their software has problems. They're trying to manage the entire car from a fucking tablet, and then it overheats and catches on fire. They could have stopped with one really, or three really good products, like the Apple model, a low-powered computer, a mid-tier computer, and a high-powered computer. They could have followed that model and just done it all through software. And they kind of are, but they're also trying to compete with, Ford and Chevy and at their game, which is new stuff all the time, which is untenable. That's why we see more recalls every year after year. Also, there are more cars, more people driving, probably more people who shouldn't be driving.
Well, and it's like, okay, I got a new phone 2 years ago, apparently, and there were certain things that I looked for when I was getting it. So, for example, I wanted to be waterproof, and it's apparently waterproof to like 5 feet, or water resistant rather. And then a really hard screen, so this one's Gorilla Glass 2, I think, which first Gorilla Glass is okay, but it's not, it would have problems if it fell in the corner. So having shattered the shit out of my previous screen, I was like, okay, let me try to find the most shock resistant screen. And I was like watching videos of them doing, the resistance test to see when it would fracture and all this shit. So I finally settled on this one. And 2 years later, I feel like exactly I got my money's worth. And at the same time, I don't feel like I would need a new phone ever. Unless this one breaks for some weird reason. There's no real reason to get a new phone unless the bands which they're using completely go out of function, or I can't really, unless the battery stops charging or something, I can't really think of a reason why I'd ever need a new phone.
I have a Samsung candy bar from 2007, 2006, 2007. And every so often the battery still holds a charge, and every so often I power it up just to see if it works. And it always has full 5 bars of 3G connectivity. I've not powered it up and seen nothing yet. And it always asks me if I want to call the police. It's like, do you want to make an emergency call?
I think they do have to keep the emergency shut on all the phones, even if it's not active.
What's crazy is that 3G coverage across the United States is almost complete, almost 100% coverage. So in theory, I have an emergency phone that can call from almost everywhere. All I got to do is keep it charged once every 6 months. It's a 15-year-old phone. No, how old is it? Yeah, that's an old-ass phone. Shit. 15-year-old phone. Still powers up. I think when I got that, I didn't even have a concept of upgrading my phone. I got it because my previous phone, because I changed carriers and I had to get a new phone.
Yeah, these coverage maps are pretty wild. But it's, it's really funny that in 2022, we don't have 100% coverage in America. You would think of all things that we would finally have 100%, but we don't. I think it's there's old people who don't care about things being faster, just in general, and we have to coexist with those people. Where it's like, okay, if I didn't have to drive my car, but if I can get into a vehicle that would like be an electric, like hovercraft or whatever, just something that could get me to my like move me to my destination at, let's say, 200 miles an hour, and I'm not driving because it's like FAA traffic directed. So there's like a central node that like connects, which is effectively how planes don't hit each other. And even though the sky's big, it's very possible that around an airport, planes could start colliding if there was no FAA. So like the idea that I could get some vehicle that has an FAA monitor making sure that I get directly to my location, like why would I want to risk driving instead of that, where especially if I have to drive at like 30 miles an hour, the aforementioned option is clearly superior. But just because people have their traditions and set in their ways, we're still driving vehicles. So that's where I do understand that there are people who are going to be really difficult to move into more efficient and effective technology. But at the same time, it's like we can't allow those people to like dictate how we respond to them, because I do think that it's reacting to their frameworks is what is keeping us stuck in their frameworks instead of just like moving on to the next one. Whereas if you look at Europe, it's not that they're past capitalism completely, but they've moved on to more sustainable paradigms as a general principle. Like even France, like in all its racist glory, if you go talk to business people in France, they have a more rational perspective on sustainable operations than business people in America. It's just the way it is. Not to say that they're all rational or think clearly for that matter. It's just the shit we're doing here is completely unsustainable, but it's also the old people are going to die off eventually. So it's like I struggle with the notion of whether we should spend time fighting them or just focused on building the new things, understanding that they're going to fucking die off anyway. Like,
I think Gen Z has already given us the template. They've already shown us the answer. Just move on. We got to find something better. It's more important to do better things than to do things better. Doing things better just means we're doing the same old thing and trying to outdo somebody else. But doing better things means moving on to something better. There is something better beyond the horizon.
I get that. It's a matter of like, can that happen without them killing everything off while we're trying to do better?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think that's the issue. It's like, can we ignore Nazism and not expect it to burn everything down while we work on the other shit?
No, I think we pretty much have to stomp Nazis. I think that's the only...
Then you can't leave it alone. So that's where it is. Like, it seems easy to just be, oh yeah, we'll focus on this. Well, while you focus on this, Nazis are doing their own thing and growing out of control. It's like leaving a forest fire to burn doesn't always mean it's going to burn itself out and not end up burning your shit down with it. And that's the ultimate, I'm not saying I have the fucking answer. That's why it's a dilemma.
Yeah.
Is like, on the one hand, you think, yeah, we should just focus on building this other shit. But then that allows Nazis to fucking grow out of control, which is exactly what's happened. So it's like, I wish it was easy.
Oh, I don't think anything is easy. Not when we're talking about like broad social constructs that are clearly flawed. It'd be one thing if we could, like, compartmentalize all of these things. I don't even think that's possible. I think we tried to compartmentalize these things, actually, and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I think happened, and it didn't work.
It's like trying to solve all the problems like in a sequence doesn't work because we can't actually assign priority because there are too many interests. And solving one doesn't actually solve any of the others. You need to solve several simultaneously. But nobody can do that because that involves trusting people. None of this stuff works if people aren't team players, which is the sad part. And it's hard to have a group of individuals function as a team.
Yeah, I do think that is like also a trade-off. It's like when you don't give this notion of some sort of collective identity, then it is really difficult to get collective activities. So yeah, where's the line between individualism and nationalism? And tribalism doesn't work either.
Tribalism works in its infancy when it's still socialism.
Right. It works on small scales.
Yeah. Really small scales. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe there isn't a functioning translation between various scales of economy. Like a small scale socialist economy can function just fine, but how does it interact with a much larger economy that cannot function on those terms?
Or there's maybe an assumption that anything can function at that scale, and maybe
nothing can, apparently.
Maybe that's the false assumption, is that anything can function at that scale to 100% effectiveness or efficiency, which I don't think that was like the expression, or that anybody assumed it was up to 100%. But when something's out the gate, like not able to go past 50% for X, Y, and Z reasons, then it's never even going to come remotely close to 100%. So
yeah,
that's also where it's like, what is the
entire list of crime that doesn't happen in small communities, that only emerges once a population reaches critical mass.
Right. Yeah. Like you can't get organized crime in a small place. It has to be a certain scale to start getting shit like organized crime. Yeah. Otherwise, it's not big enough to sustain it,
or like keep it hidden.
Yeah, or make it its own market, because it's like if you have 1,000 people, how many of those people can be the drug dealers, and how many can be the users? Just realistically, and it's like you can't get some situation where you have like a massive organized drug deal. Or a drug scene when there's only fucking 1,000 people, and it's like, well, if everybody got addicted, it's still just that's a small rave.
I remember years ago reading a story about a small town in Nebraska that was like a major manufacturing site for methamphetamines, and it was the kind of thing when the DEA went in there. All the lawns were perfect. Every house was perfect. Every house had an open window with a fresh pipe cooling in the window. Everyone was like, Stepford Wives level of put togetherness. The entire town. They were all manufacturing meth, and it looked like it. It's like when you go into if you ever been into like a International House of Pancakes, like, and you see it and it's really clean. Somebody there is probably consuming copious amounts of speed.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like, I don't want to say I don't trust a clean breakfast 24-hour breakfast place, but I almost don't trust a 24-hour breakfast place that's spotless, because there's just something wrong with that too. Be like a burger place that it doesn't smell like grease. Or French fries. Imagine going to McDonald's and it didn't smell like French fries.
Yeah, that'd be weird. That'd totally be off-putting. Or going into Subway and it didn't smell like bread.
Oh, that'd be really weird.
mean I'm not going to smell like I've been working at a Subway just by eating here? Oh, that's why Hinkle's was like, it was a trade-off in that those burgers were so good, but you're going to smell like fucking somebody's armpits after you go there.
Yeah, and then your gut's going to make you pay the price later.
Yes.
It's so good. Oh, man.
That too, man. Well, it's funny, like now, okay, I haven't really been eating dairy, just sort of an experiment. And then, like, that includes not having it in coffee and shit. And then, like, if I go eat a pizza, I'm fucked up for 3 days.
Oh, yeah?
And, yeah, it's like, that. It's that type of shit where, because of the way that, like, inflammation happens in the body, and then the way that certain types of foods just cause inflammation I would imagine a lot of people think they have irritable bowel syndrome but just consume too much dairy or too much fucking wheat or some shit.
You know,
I'm like,
lactose tolerance is a very European thing. You have to have European genetics.
And that's the notion that they're tolerant. I don't think they actually are. I think they're just more tolerant than people who are officially lactose intolerant, in that the way that it fucks, like,
they just put up with the gas better.
Yeah, exactly. Like the side effects just aren't.
They don't mind farting all the time, and
they don't mind the swollen gut, and they don't mind walking around feeling like, oh, I've got like a bubble in my belly, because it's worth the cheese. So I think the notion that there's a European lactose tolerance, I just think they don't care about the uncomfortableness that comes with like eating bad foods,
because they've never gone long enough without having done it to get used to what life is like without it.
Yeah, because then it's like I can bear the gut. Like right now, I just had some heavy cream in my coffee. I can bear that, but I know the difference between that and fucking oat milk or almond milk, in that it just doesn't, even the slightest bit of discomfort for the sake of like, oh, the flavor is worth it. It's like, okay, yeah, in a sense, but over time, that may be what's causing the colon cancer. That may be what's causing the like irritable bowel or whatever. And then it then seems like taking some sort of counter drug is worth it, rather than just cutting that thing out of the diet to avoid the discomfort. And that's where I'm like, there's just so many food options that like I don't really need to eat cheese all that often. Like, you know, even just for the sake of once a month, just to remind, oh, you know, this fucking mozzarella and this like gorgonzola, they're fucking delicious. Yeah. I'm not gonna act like I don't enjoy the flavors, but there's plenty of other delicious things that don't fuck me up. Like,
so I enjoy cheese, but I'm not like buying it regularly and eating cheese like as a snack unless Sheila buys some cheese and it's there. I've never really thought of myself as, let's go get some cheese and have a cheese plate. But there are some things that I've come to really enjoy, like when I roast some vegetables. I roasted some broccoli and cauliflower the other night, and we had some cheese, some shredded cheese, and I put it in there, and it was a very nice accent. And I want to emphasize accent. It wasn't the emphasis at all. And a week and a half ago or so, my dad and I, we made some pork chops, and he sprinkled some mozzarella on them, and it was really nice. But also, again, it was an accent. It wasn't the kind of thing that you'd look at and be like, oh yeah, I love cheese. It was more like, oh, there's cheese on this. I think cheese is one of those things that, when done in moderation, can be fantastic. But it's one of those things that's also really easy to overdo. And by overdo, I mean like one extra cube might be the point of no return.
Yeah, because then if you like actually weigh out what an ounce of cheese looks like, it's a lot. It in a block, it doesn't look like much, but if you chop it up, it's actually a significant amount of cheese.
Yeah.
So when people are just eating ounce blocks of cheese by the like handful, it's like, oh my God. You just ate like half a pound of cheese, bro. What's up with that? But because it's super easy when they're in a certain format, it's like,
oh yeah, it's like drinking through a straw. You can just down the beverage through a straw that you normally wouldn't dare, like, because your teeth. Nobody likes their teeth freezing.
Right.
But a straw, just bypass the teeth real fast.
Yeah.
I remember when we were going to house parties, I would see people with beer with a straw.
Oh, that's funny.
And I knew what they were doing. They just wanted to get it over with. But it was hilarious because that's how you do it. You just want to get it over with. Fucking straw.
If it's terrible, if it tastes terrible, but then that's where.
Why are they drinking it if it tastes terrible? That's
right.
That's why I stopped drinking beer for the most part, because most of it to me just tastes terrible. Mm-hmm. I know that there are health benefits associated with kombucha, but it tastes so bad to me that I just can't get past that initial shock.
Which is like, you should drink something else for those same benefits.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way kombucha's got a specific thing that only it has, and it's like, you could probably drink something else that's.
I could probably just eat seaweed
gonna taste well
and have the same probiotic effect in my gut. I could eat kimchi and get a superior probiotic effect in my gut.
Yeah. Kimchi is really good for that.
Oh yeah. Man, I love opening a jar of kimchi.
Too, man.
Oh, yeah, garlic's great.
So there's plenty of stuff like that are good alternatives where I think we get used to just doing certain things, and then the idea of changing them is just so out of the realm of possibility for whatever reason.
A few months ago you said something that's actually it was like a year ago, actually. It's almost a year ago. You said something to the effect of, you see people making the same food just with better ingredients, but they're not actually doing anything.
Yeah.
They're not actually like making a better variation of a hamburger. They're just making a more expensive hamburger. They're not taking that sirloin and preparing it in a more advanced way. They're just using a more expensive piece of meat and making it the same way they always had. Or in the case of like macaroni and cheese, sure, it becomes more complex, but when it boils down to it, it's still just macaroni and cheese. It's not like a advanced pasta salad or even an advanced pasta dish that requires some kind of complex sauce. It's just expensive mac and cheese. I think that you were really nailing on something in that moment there, because when I see like some $12 hamburger, I'm just hard pressed to buy it.
Yeah, like what are you paying for there?
Yeah, the chair
for a $12 hamburger,
the atmosphere. Definitely not paying for $12 worth of ground beef, because I can get a whole hell of a lot of ground beef for $12. Really good ground beef too.
Yeah, it's like $6 for 95% lean, or 93 for a pound.
Yeah,
so it's not that expensive for a whole pound.
Yeah, you can get a 12-pound burger for that much money. So, or a 2-pound burger for that much money. 2 pounds of burger is insane. A 1-pound burger is insane. So yeah, I think that there's some kind of disparity between like knowing that something is expensive and knowing how to make something expensive. Like, just because the burger's got a fancy meat doesn't mean it's a fancy burger.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio.